from here. So the first idea, big idea we covered is that wherever we find ourselves, wherever a person finds himself, there is a reason they're there. So sometimes whether it's a life stage in life, a stage in life, the people we meet, the circumstances that happen to us or to those we love, which are not always easy to digest, but there's some good we can do or bring into the world from those experiences. And we talked about different occasions, different opportunities, different layers of the story. We talked about how so the stages of life that people are, and then we discussed a concept in Kabbalah that every single item of materialism that we interact with, that we affect, we're actually, there is divine and godly potential in that. So according to Judaism and Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, we believe that every single material item has the potential for holiness. Okay, so what does that mean, potential for holiness? That means even this cup of tea, okay, it can be used to pour hot water on someone and hurt them, or I can use it to make a nice bracha, drink it, calm and soothe myself after an intense day, learn Torah and share together ideas with you. And it's a very unique perspective to Judaism, where we see a lot of physical and mundane things that others would look at as not spiritual, and we see them all having potential. And with this concept is that we're humanity, we are partners with God, and our role is to elevate the material world and reveal the spiritual potential within things. So yes, even money, go to work, you have $100, 10% goes to tzedakah. You've now just not elevated $10 that you've given to tzedakah, $90, and you've elevated all the material items that you engaged with in order to earn that $100. So the gas for the car and everything. So those are some of the ideas we talked about. We also mentioned, I just want to look back to make sure there's the big ideas I get to, that all of us are going to have biases, and we can see that in this country. We can see that in the world. When we say the word bias, we think of always a negative thing, right? I have a bias towards this child. I have a bias towards that political party. All of us have biases. And then we discussed how while the word net can evoke a negative connotation, we actually can train ourselves to have a positivity bias. We can train ourselves to think of things in a positive way and think of people in a positive way, okay? And I think, and Allison asked a really good question. So I'm gonna, Allison Nagelberg from New Jersey, it asked a really good question, which we're gonna launch into today's class with that question, even though we're a little bit late, but we'll take this as long as we can, and we're here together to learn. And there's a lot of beautiful ideas we're gonna share. So just to catch you up, Allison and Leora this week, a young Jewish Aggie alum, a former student, her sibling passed away very suddenly in her sleep, a blood clot that went from her foot to her lungs, 22-year-old, tragic, horrific, and the family has been left pretty shocked, bereaving, et cetera, a lot of guilt, all the things that, God forbid, we should never know, whatever. So, not whatever, I'm not diminishing, there's not enough adjectives to describe what this is, the depth of devastation. And so Allison Engelberg, I'm going to, with that, pass the mic over. First of all, are there any points I missed so far, big ideas that we covered? I know there were more, but my brain, for those of you who have notes, some of these women are better on top of their game more than I am. L'chaim, ladies, by the way. And I will say, Leora and Allison, we are actually dedicating the learning in memory of this young, beautiful girl soul. And I'm going to tell the family, and I did say this, that because this is a class on positivity bias, what's come to light is how much positivity this young lady has spread throughout the world, and all that's coming up to the table, and everyone's like, whoa, what a light. So any other big ideas, Shelly or Allison or Nomi, that I skipped, please just jump in, or Leora.
Go ahead.
I would say the only thing I would add is that, in line with the idea of training ourselves to have a positivity bias, is to look at challenges as opportunity, look at a challenge as a gift from God, to try to train ourselves to turn that positivity bias on, especially when there's something particularly challenging.
And we all know that is the way that is absolutely the way things are, right? Something that is, we can see it, and so often in our life where we hit a challenge and we overcome it, and when we overcome it, we become stronger, we become better. It's like the difference between protecting our children from every single struggle, or knowing that though they are struggling with this, they will come out stronger and more resilient and with more life skills. So also reframing our challenges, right? I think that was, oh, and I would say, Allison, you kind of touched upon this, but the fact that it's work to reframe our challenges. Okay, that it's not easy street, and no one has it no one has it easy. The nature of this world is that there's going to be struggles, and that's the nature of life. And that what we can do is change a little bit of how we engage in those challenges. Shelley, you were going to add something?
Oh yeah, just I had a few notes. So I was just going to.
Please do.
So we had also just talked about how it's also like a psychological thing with the cognitive restructuring, that you can choose and you can change your thoughts, and then you talked about how a Jew is never stuck, and the most transformative moments happen when someone else believes in you more than you believe in yourself, and then let's see, if you find yourself in a situation, we can find a way out, and there's and then also you just talked about elevating the godly sparks of space, and you said this physical space we are in, we are supposed to elevate. And then I had one other thing. Let's see. Every single thing, circumstance, life occurrence, God is still here. Everything's divine providence, and it's not the experiences that shape us; it's the meaning we give to those experiences.
Right. And, we talked a lot about that. Right. You can see two children have the same experience, and one person is going to be like, oh, that's, a challenge, or, oh, who cares? And the other one's gonna be like, oh, how horrible, right? I know, Allison, you have more than one child, so both Allisons have more than one child, and you can see how they can process things completely different, right? Actually, all of you have more than one child, and they're raised by the same parents, and the same thing, and they interpret things differently. We bring our nature, our personality, our upbringing, and our experiences to the table when we're filtering how we process our life experiences. These are all factors. Shelley, thank you. Anything else?
And then we just discussed the book, The Choice, and how we have the choice whether, that we can be victimized, but we can choose whether we want to be a victim or not.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. So far, I think we got an excellent recap. You ladies are amazing. Now, Allison Engelberg, we're going to jump straight into your question, and we'll see how far we go. Go for it.
So, Manya was telling us about this, tragic event that happened this week with this young girl dying so unexpectedly. And when she was telling the story, I was thinking about our teachings from the past couple of weeks, which have a lot to do with the fact that God has a plan. And if something happens, despite the fact that we have free will, and that's a whole nother, point. The paradox of free will and God's plan, and what you can and can't change and how to deal with it, and yet God has a plan. And along the lines of when bad things happen to good people, the Holocaust and deaths and sickness and all these terrible things, how do you help these parents to understand that God had a plan for their 22-year-old daughter to die in her sleep like this?
So first of all, I want to just clarify that when I got on the phone with the mom that day, I had no plan of telling her where souls go and how things work. I was just going to be a listening, and I hear you, and sympathy. And it turned out that she really demanded, I don't know what Judaism says about souls. I don't know. You have to answer me. I don't have answers. And so I did. And I told her, I said, this is not okay. But I did explain, according to what we believe in Kabbalah, why souls come into the world, why souls leave the world. And it was like the hardest words to get out, because it's so counterintuitive to the emotional reality of what this woman was going through, and the fact that she had not even, the child was not even buried. They hadn't even gone to see the body. Like, the kid was in a different state. You cannot get more fresh, right? But on the other hand, she's demanding. So how do I not answer? And so I did give her the basic answers, but I still said, it's not okay, and it's not okay. And we're here for you. And it's not, I just kept reiterating those words of we are here for you. This is not okay. I wish I was closer to, whatever. But how could I not answer her when she wanted those answers? And so I did still give her those answers. that being said, I want to share with you, and I did share it with students. You may have seen it on Facebook. I did share with it. So the last interview with Jonathan Sachs, we did say how Jonathan Sachs just passed away on Shabbat. And for those of you who don't know him, I mean, really, really, really brilliant mind. And I think what I'm going to do is I want to show you a video clip from his last. I just want to see if he's posted it, because this is his last interview. I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to hit share screen for a second, because I don't have these brilliant answers, right? Because no one, okay, well, I'm going to share it in his words, because I think he does a much better job at this. But I will say it is an existential question, which humanity has been faced with since the beginning of time. So anyone who wonders why bad things happen to good people, you are in very good company. And I remember once, I will say this story briefly, and some of you may have heard it, when Levi was little, and I think there was stabbing attacks in Jerusalem, and he was very somehow tuned in, whether it was a family, he was worried, he was tuned in. And I remember he said to me, "Why, mommy, why in every generation have people started with us? Like, why?" And I said to him, "You know, you're right, Levi. Let's ask a different question. How is it possible that in every generation we were still here? Like, as Jewish people, we should not still be here. We defy all the rules of peoplehood, of society. We defy everything. We don't make sense." And why was that? I think in a way, not an answer, but an answer, because ultimately there's not an answer that's meaning this question. The fact that we have this question means we're healthy, upstanding people. And I just want to share these words. I wasn't planning on sharing tonight, but I'm going to share. This is the last.
Actually, I started off telling you about my parents, and it just comes to.
This is the last interview with Jonathan Sachs. And actually, the young interviewer she happens to be a cousin of rabbis from Australia. And she has this podcast, and she was interviewing him. And it's a minute and a half. So I think it's worth watching. Everyone, feel free. Give me your thoughts.
To mind, I remember my father said to us that the last time he saw you, you remembered my mother had asked you a question, why do bad things happen to good people? And you said to my father, tell your wife, I still don't have an answer for her. I was wondering if you had any more insight.
Yes, I do, actually.
Oh.
God does not want us to understand why bad things happen to good people. Because if we ever understood, we would be forced to accept that bad things happen to good people. And God does not want us to accept those bad things. He wants us not to understand so that we will fight against the bad and the injustices of this world. And that is why there is no answer to that question, because God has arranged that we shall never have an answer to it.
Okay. I think that is from a man who was sick, was ill, clearly more sick than many of us realized. When they asked before Rosh Hashanah for people to say prayers for him, I don't think anyone realized how ill he was. This was from very recently. This was right before Rosh Hashanah, this interview. And I think that ultimately, there's a very famous passage in Psalms where King David says to God, Yashav olam lefnei Elokim chesed ve'emes mi'yanatzeru. He says, may the world sit equally before God. Like, why? Why isn't the world equal? Why are there good and bad? Why is there sadness and joy? Why is there one that can have, their children alive and healthy, and one that's suffering and struggling? So this is a question that King David, was a giant of a man who had a relationship with God, was also asking the same question. Why? Like, why? And I think that the answer that comes from Gemara, from the Talmud, based on that passage, I'm going to just read it to you. So in the words of the Talmud, because I think the words of the Talmud are very eloquent and succinct and clear. David said to the Holy One, blessed be you, you Lord of the universe, may the world sit equally before you. that is make your world either rich or poor. Like why, you know, those who haves and those who have nots, good and evil. You know, we could look at the world and we could shudder. We could absolutely shudder where we see, we've said this in the past, this is an Olam HaSheker, an upside down world. We're just yesterday in the UN, great, another, you know, declaration against the state of Israel, the horrible, you know, state that they are, while Iran is getting free passes left and right, right? It's an upside down world. We are living in an upside down world. And that is, so King David saying to God, why is it structured this way? So Allison, your question is the same that King David had. You're in good company with generations of people. You're in good company. The first 2 times Jonathan Sachs was asked this question by your mother, he had no answer. And then his answer was, we're not supposed to understand. And then God's answer to King David in the words of the Talmud were, if I do so, who will perpetuate and upkeep kindness and truth? For if all men were either rich or poor, and here we're just talking about monetary, but think of rich and poor in many ways, who will perform acts of mercy? Meaning if the world was a fixed world, we would have nothing to fix it. As Jonathan Sachs, I think, just said so clearly, if we understood the reasons behind things, we would be okay with it. We would say, oh, that's okay that your child passed away, their soul came into the world, and there's a reason. That's not okay. And we should never be okay. And when I was speaking to the young girl today, I went to Houston to be with her, and she said, you know, I'm really mad. She said it so, and it's such a, I'm really mad at Judaism right now. And I said, Judaism or God? She said, I'm really mad at God. I said, you should be. Like, you should be. I get it. And she smiled. She got tears. She said, that's what I love about Judaism. What was her point? Her point was, I could be really mad at God, and I could complain, and I could worry, but then I need to do something. And you know what? I want to tell you, because this young girl spent 4 years at Chabad, where she understands that we do mitzvot in people's honors, in a memory. She understood about souls, and a soul is forever. And I reminded her some of those things in conversation when she asked. I did not be like, let me tell you what's going on Kabbalistically about souls. I know your sister's not, you know, is barely, you know, buried, but let me give you information. I didn't do that at all. It was very like on her cue. And I even said, I don't want to answer these questions. I said, no, Manya, I need those answers. And so, but because she knew that we do things in people's memory and that a soul is forever and that she can perpetuate her sister's light, she said, I want to light candles in her memory. And she actually had me before Shabbat send out texts to a bunch of people to light candles in her sister's memory. And I told her all the candle lighting at Chabad will be in Cami's memory, all of it. And between now and the end of the semester, we're going to make a little Facebook thing. We're going to let students participate in this in a more way. I want to know, you know how she knows? Because she just sent me a video clip. 6 years ago, a very dear friend lost a son very tragically, Menzel Cutler. And remember the Modani, the gratitude class I've done? You may have sat in on it. You may have heard about it. I've done it all over the world, but basically it was created a course created in his memory. And because his bar mitzvah spoke about gratitude and the gift of every day. And she actually, from when she had her bat mitzvah at the Kotel, hearing Mendel's story and how he lived with gratitude daily, she actually started saying Modani. And a few weeks ago was his 6th yard site. And she sent in a video clip saying why she says Modani in his memory, how she knows she's giving a gift to him, how she appreciates that his soul can benefit from it, and how it's also changed her life. And she told me, I right now am so grateful to the fact that I was able to understand that what we do in this world affects souls beyond. Because now that I know that from a different point, I would never think I would need to know that, but now I know I could do mitzvot in Cami's honor. So I'm not Allison, I don't think we have an answer. I can send you a clip later where the Rebbe, there was a young woman in Crown Heights, I remember this, raped and, not raped, but assaulted, murdered. It was a very tragic situation in Crown Heights, and the Rebbe took it very personally. She was a young mother, her child was nearby. It was a horrific situation. And the Rebbe stood up literally, I mean, crying, screaming, I mean, like in pain. He took it very personally. This was under his watch in essence, right? And a leader of the Jewish people feels that connection to the pain of the generation. And there's no answer. I think if we can answer it, then we can lose our drive to want to fix it. So if we look around our country and we're worried, or we see things heading in a direction we're not happy with our youth, I cannot tell you how often I hear people of, let's say, you know, a little older than me, look at this generation and they think they throw their hands up in the air, you know, and I feel like we have to see what the needs are of this generation, And we have to empower them and believe in them and lift them up to help them maximize their potential. So we could look at the world and go, oh my goodness, you know, where's my bunker? Maybe a good reason, you know. I say in Texas, we feel a little bit more, Texas has a little bit of a detachment sometimes. We could worry or panic, or we could say, I'm seeing something, it's frustrating me, what can I do about it? And I think that the latter is a healthier mindset. I'm not saying it's an easy mindset, and I'm not saying it's easy to figure out what to do. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't feel pain and grief, but we have to be able to see things differently. And I kind of wanna, there was like, I'll remember it later. There's something that happened to me today where I was looking at a certain situation a certain way. And I wanna jump into today's class briefly, not the whole class, because I know we don't have full time, but I wanna go through the main ideas. So the main idea of today's class is, how do we develop an ayin tov? Like, it's great to say that I accept my challenges and look through things, and it's great to say that everything I interact with I could elevate and lift up and use for good. And it's great to say that struggles or challenges, both globally for myself, personally, macrocosmically, microcosmically, are meant to shape us and frame us. It's great to say that there's good that we could do from our struggles, right? It's great to say believe, but how do I do it? Like, how do I do it? And I think that one of the things we do is we say, how do we develop an ayin tov? Ayin tov means a good eye, how we look at a situation. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, just to give you like a little historical context, he was the leader of the Jewish people during the Roman Empire, in the beginning of the Roman Empire's kind of revolt. And he's the one who negotiated with Vespasian in order to allow the Jewish people, even though they knew they were going to be exiled, it was kind of he lived through the exile, and they knew they were going to be, you know, they were taken over, the temple was gone, they were going to be dispersed around the world. He actually was the one who asked Vespasian to spare the city of Yavne and Torah scholars, which in the first line of scholars we discussed, like, that's such a weird request, like, save the women and children, what are you saying? And we said that really the link for Jewish people to continue as who we are, one of our secrets to our eternal nature is the fact that we always have Torah. And Torah is always our moral code and our moral guide and our moral compass, and helps us see things with clarity. When the rest of the world goes crazy, we still could realign to our value system. And so he actually sent his students at a certain point, obviously before, you know, things were going crazy with the Romans. But, and the other thing is, he was, that was who he was. He sent his students around the world, and he said, I want you to leave, and I want you to find out, what does it take to live a fulfilling life? A righteous and fulfilling life. Now, you could say, what do you mean? You're the greatest Torah giant of the generation. The Talmud was being, you know, scribed as we're talking, which is the basis of so much of how we live as Jews, right? Moral code and ethics and values. Why are you sending them abroad? But he obviously had a reason. And when many of his students came back, one of his students, Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, came back and said that I have found the best advice, how to develop an ayin tov, a good eye. And he said, what we see depends on what we're looking for. And that's a really big statement. That's easy to say and a lot harder to do. That means when I see someone else, can I see beyond? And can I see the good? Can I find within them the good? And there was a man who lived in a community near Crown Heights, a Hasidic community, but not a Chabad community, and came to the Love Cherub, and he said, there was a lot of questions he had, and one of the questions he had was, he said, there's a passage in Talmud, and this passage in Talmud discusses that even the sinners of Israel are filled with good deeds, like a pomegranate is full of seeds. So you know we have a pomegranate on Rosh Hashanah. Why do we eat a pomegranate on Rosh Hashanah? It's actually based on this Talmud. What is this passage in Talmud? That even if you're really not good, I look at my neighbor, or I look at what, you know, a student, and I say, oh my goodness, look at their behavior, you know, promiscuous or unhealthy or mean or toxic. Yet how could this Talmud say that even the sinners are full of, like a pomegranate with seeds? That's a great question. So we eat it to remind ourselves of the fact that no matter, because Rosh Hashanah is about Tshuva and about returning to our potential. So we say, look, even if I mess up this year, I still am full of good deeds like a pomegranate. So that's one of the reasons we eat a pomegranate on Rosh Hashanah, okay? A few reasons, but that's one of them. And he said to the Rebbe, isn't this a contradiction? Either they're a sinner, either they're bad, or they're good. Like, how could it be the same thing? So the Rebbe got very quiet, and the Rebbe started to cry. And the Rebbe said to him, I have a question on the same passage, very same passage. How, if the Jew we're speaking of, the person we're speaking of, is full of good deeds, how can we even call them a sinner? It's a paradigm, and it's a shift in paradigm. It's one way of looking at something, and it's flipping it on its head to look at differently. And how we see things will undoubtedly affect what it is, how that thing, the outcome of what that is. And I want to show you something that I showed the students, and it's so fascinating. You look at this image, okay? What do you see in this image? Feel free to say, either write it down, say, what do you see in this image? I'll make it a little bigger. Anyone want to say what they see?
Well, young girl.
A young girl? Anyone else?
Yeah, me too. A young girl giving the bag with the hat.
With a bonnet, yeah.
Yes.
Anyone else?
So
Anything else?
she has her face turned away from us.
Yeah, young girl with her face turned away. Does anyone see an old lady? It took me a long time to see it. Last week I did this with the students. Some saw the young girl, some saw the old lady right away and couldn't see the young girl. I saw the young girl, I couldn't see the old lady till someone pointed it out. So if you want to see the old lady, which I couldn't see, oh, oops, this is her nose, this is her mouth, and her chin. That's her eye.
I see.
Yes, yes.
It was very, very hard for people to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to share with you a few years ago. It's fascinating, by the way, to, it's very, hold on a second, I'm just trying to find something. Nope, humans are, sorry. It's very fascinating to see, they actually have done this study on tons of people, and they find, hold on a second, let me just move this. I'm gonna lower this for a second so that it's not New York, and then okay. So so first of all, different people see different things, and it depends on what your background is. There's a lot of studies on it. I'm sure some of you who study psychology could do more research for us, but it has to do, meaning it's a fascinating experiential lesson in seeing what do we see, because we bring to the table a certain perspective that affects what we see. So anyone ever hear of HONI, Humans in New York? So HONI, Humans in New York, was, Allison, do you remember what they were? They were very big for a while. They made a coffee table book. If you look on the bottom, you can see their coffee table book. Do you know where they?
It's expanded to all sorts of other, like, humans of this, humans of
yes.
humans of Israel,
yes.
Tel Aviv, of Jerusalem, of yeah.
So it started with New York. Two, I think, people went around taking pictures of humans in New York and getting their story. What a great way to bring ideas together. And now, if you look, there's different countries. Look on the top here. There's a whole series. There's different stories. This Humans in New York, I remember when I saw it, I had to find it because I remember when I saw it, it made such an impression on me. So here's two guys sitting on a park bench in Central Park, a classic look, maybe on their lunch break, obviously, and look down at what they say, because I think it's so fascinating. Anyone want to read that out loud?
We're eye doctors. What's something about the eye that most people don't realize? The eye doesn't see, the brain sees. The eye just transmits. So what we see isn't only determined by what comes through the eyes. What we see is affected by our memories, our feelings, and by what we've seen before.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Isn't that an incredible thing? So really, what we see, I'm going to just shut this, hit stop share. What we see, and I'm happy to send you guys any of these links, what we see actually is in the world or in others actually has less to do with, it's actually our brain. So therefore, we can rewire our brain differently to see things differently. That means our neighbor who thinks differently. That means our child who is maybe doing something that we're not comfortable with. We have to see beyond it, the Ayin Tov. So I want to share with you something interesting. So there was a man named Reb Levi Yitzchak Frieden, and for 20 years, he hung out in Chabad in the Lubavitch headquarters, and he took photos. He was a photographer, photojournalist, before photojournalism was cool. And he had tons and tons of photos of Hasidic life in Crown Heights in the 60s and 70s. And in 76, he took his exhibit and he took it to Tel Aviv University. He took it to Israel, to Bar Ilan University, and he had it out there, and amongst there was a guest book. Well, someone looked at the guest book, and there was a lot of beautiful comments, well done, accolades, oh, you know, whatever. And then there was one. And I think this comment stands out clearly. One comment is, with all due respect, okay, this was just a guest book in his display. With all due respect to the superb photography, okay, great photography, the subjects you have chosen, this subject you have chosen is extremely clerical and takes us back to the primitive darkness of the Middle Ages. Okay, fine. Someone wrote a comment in a comic book basically saying it's the 70s and 60s and 70s. Why are you capturing photos of this archaic Hasidic rabbi? He's taking us back to the Middle Ages, the darkness of the male, taking our people backwards in life. Like, we're trying to progress and move forwards and blend into America, and why are you taking us backwards? And okay, so the guest time passed. Rabbi Frieden was not rabbi. He was not a rabbi. He was actually a clean-shaven Russian Jew. He got back to Crown Heights and he went to the Rebbe to show him that report what he did. He took his thing and he handed the Rebbe the guest book, kind of almost like forgetting the comment. The Rebbe opens up to that page and the Rebbe says to him, please compliment this journalist on his strength of character. Okay. It's a direct insult to the Rebbe and to Frieden. Not actually Frieden, because you took photos, but to the Rebbe for sure. What is the strength of character? It takes fortitude to differ from all the other responses. Everyone else is positive, this guy was negative. Wow, what fortitude he has. What fortitude this man has. The Rebbe then concluded with a further positive spin. Tell him also that not everything in the Middle Ages were dark. Do you remember in class 1 we said every single thing is a mix of good and bad? That it depends on what we try to focus on, nurture, and feed, and the path we choose. There's no circumstance that's all good. Everything is a mix. Here, someone is direct insult, and he's saying, wow, this man has strength of character. He could stand up for his own opinion. And I think that this is not a simple thing for us to do, but it's something that's very powerful. I want to share with you another video, which I'm going to share with you another video. Hold on one second. I thought I had, you know, whatever. One day I'll have all of this together before class starts. In the meantime, no, it's going to pull my plug. I know, it's okay. History, let me just pull up the thing. I thought I had it on my history. No, I don't. History.
Well, you've done a lot today already, so.
Oh, it's been a day. Yeah. It has been a day. I'm not going to lie.
And we appreciate you taking the time to do this.
No, I love this, ladies.
You don't have to do this.
I love to, and I love learning together, and I love, thank you for giving me this time. Okay, so here's one more fascinating video that I want to share with you, and we'll brainstorm on how to do this in a practical way, because we always like to keep things practical here. It's not easy to be practical because all these ideas are, I really want to say this. I think it's important before I hit share screen the next. All these are really beautiful ideas and they're a lot harder to do. It's easy to say, harder to do. Harder to see our spouse this way, with an ayin tov. Harder to see our children when they're behaving the way we are not happy. Harder sometimes to see our country or many people in a way that we're not comfortable. And how do we see the good? Can we? And I want to share with you one more video that I think will really be meaningful. Okay.
I was at Torres Chaim, which was on Belmont Avenue in Brooklyn. Shortly before my 10th birthday, my mother and my baby sister and myself went to see the Rebbe. We went to 770, and my mother started to talk to the Rebbe. My son, Shalom, He's been thrown out of the yeshivas, and the rabbi says this, and he's not listening, and the rabbis are complaining he doesn't like the school, he doesn't like the homework, he doesn't like the program, he likes eating stuff in class, and then my mother's crying and crying because she was searching for answers. The Rebbe turns to me, and then he smiles and he goes, "Come here." So I started the conversation because I was ready. I said to the Rebbe, "You're the Rebbe?" So the Rebbe looks at me with a big smile. He says to me 3 questions. The first question was, "Are you a good boy?" "No," with conviction. I was ready. I was used to the scene. So then he says, "You like school?" I said, "No." Then he says to me, "Do you listen to your mother?" I said, "No." So with a big smile, he turns to my mother and he goes, Emes, it's good.
Er hat aufgegraben die Mayim Chayim, was sie behalten bei jeder Rieden, a viele bei dem Mieden, was ruft sich an der Weiler. Beshem Achi is a sichere Sache, a sehr von Chefet, a sichere Sache, a sehr verbunden mit Mekel Mayim Chayim, a Bayelikim Chayim.
Emes, it's good. And that was, wow. I jumped right back into the whole scene.
Man darf sich mehr
I accidentally muted the last little, I went off the video, but in Yiddish, the Rebbe was saying that sometimes in order to reveal the wellspring, the water, the Mayim Chaim, the water that nourishes and brings life, you have to dig a little. And sometimes you have to dig a little in the dirt and you have to see beyond. And to think of this young child who already labeled themselves, I'm a no-goodnik, kicked out of multiple schools, classes, no one to deal with him. And he came to the Rebbe and he was ready, like, no, I'm a bad boy. No, I don't like school. No, I'm already, this is who I am. And what did the Rebbe say? He's honest. He's honest. The question is, can we train ourselves to have an ayin tov beyond our own subjective perspective? Because we said already, we bring our perspective to the table, our biases, our thoughts, our worries, our fears. We bring ourselves to the table, right? With our children, with our spouses, with the people around us, with people we work for, people who think differently than we do. We have a very closed idea. And I want to share with you something. There was a man in the early 70s, Christian missionaries were raging. And the Rebbe actually founded an organization to help stop missionary work, but he didn't put Chabad's name on it because in those days, there was a lot of different leaders who did not like Chabad, okay? It maybe could be said today in 2020, they didn't get it, Chabad, they didn't want to be involved if Chabad's name was involved. And so the Rebbe kept it that he had people working on it, but it didn't necessarily have Chabad's stamp. And there was one man who, when he found out Chabad was involved, he said, that's it, I'm pulling my name from it, I'm not involved in this project, I don't want to have anything to do with Chabad. And he went and he opened an organization that was very similar, doing the same thing. And so the man who was working with the Rebbe for the kind of taking on this project came to the Rebbe like very disturbed, like it's not like why? And what did the Rebbe say to him? He was like appalled, like why politics in this? Why we're all we're trying to do something good. And the Rebbe actually gave an example from the Talmud. The Rebbe said that basically, and here's an interesting known fact. So and we'll end with this main idea. The Jewish calendar was established is a lunar calendar. And how was it established? There had to be witnesses that came to the court saying they saw a new moon and it was documented and there had to be more than one witness. And in order to establish the calendar, there had to be witnesses. There were 2 people ineligible of being involved in determining whether there was a new month. Why? Because a new month, every 3 to 4 years, there's a Jewish leap year because the solar calendar is 11 days, 11 3/4 of a day longer than the lunar one. So there's a discrepancy. So every 3 to 4 years, there is a, not just Rosh, there is a leap year. Okay, so that our holidays fall out on the right seasons. Because in Judaism, it's very important that our Pesach is in the spring and our Sukkot is in the fall. They're very much tied to the theme and the ideas of the Chag. There are two people who cannot get involved in the leap year decision making with the calendar: a king and the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. So there's a whole discussion why the king can't be involved. He's the king of the Jewish people, of the land of Israel, and can't be involved in something just terminated as an extra month. The high priest as well. What is that about? And the answer in the back and forth Talmudic debate is that they both have some self-interest, even subconscious self-interest in their not being an extra month. Why? The king had to pay the military. If there's an extra month, he has to pay for another month of military service. He doesn't want an extra Jewish month because that was where it was using the lunar calendar. And the high priest, he has to serve in the temple, and he on Yom Kippur has to immerse in the mikvah. There was no heated mikvahs like in 2020. He has to immerse in the mikvah on 5 times Yom Kippur. So he also has a vested interest in the calendar moving early. You ever notice how people say Jewish holidays are early, they're late, they're early, they're late? Everyone's like, they're never on time. We're like, no, they're, this year the holidays are early. This year they're late. They're actually always on time according to the Jewish calendar. They move a little bit because of that lunar solar correction. So the high priest would technically, since he has to immerse 5 times in Yom Kippur, and he's fasting, and he's representing the Jewish people, he has a little bit of self-interest in it being earlier, in no correction. So the Talmud establishes that those two cannot be. And so the Rebbe goes on to say to this man, if you remember, who was very upset about the competition, he said that you have to understand that everyone has self-interest. And he said this man who is struggling to work together with you and establish his own Jewish community, he was a very big leader in a community before the Holocaust happened. His entire yeshiva and community was wiped out. And this project is all he has. Do you blame him for wanting to, can you blame him for wanting to ensure the success of this project and how important the work is and so close to his heart? Why am I sharing it? Because we could look at people who compete with us, people who we don't agree with, people who straight out, if you look on social media now, which I'm not a fan of staying on social media because it's so much toxicity, echo chamber, talking at each other, so much disrespect. I hate to say this, the term keyboard warrior, people typing fast and furious things that they're not thinking about the implications of those things. We know, we've learned that every single thing God created could be used for good. Social media could be used for good. Share mitzvot, share Torah, share inspiration, share positivity. Share this video of Jonathan Sachs. There's so much good we could share. The world does not have a shortage of darkness and negativity. We need to bring light, and we have to work on our own subjective perspective. Look at someone else with an ayin tov, with a good eye. Can we do that? Can I look beyond behaviors? And, I'll go off the record maybe soon and unmute the video before I say this, but I think it's something that takes deep work. And I taught this class to the students last week. And I challenged them. I said, by next week, I want you to think of one situation where you're looking at it one way, and then you see beneath the surface, and you see something differently. And you work hard to see an ayin tov. And I actually challenged them at the end of class. I told them, I want you to think of one person that bothers or disturbs you. Now, if you only have one person, pat yourself on the back, ladies, because I think there's more than one. And sometimes it's at the same time, okay? And if that doesn't happen to you, kudos, you rock, but I'm human, and there are people who sometimes disturb or annoy me, okay? And so I challenged the students, find someone that either bothers or annoys you. And I said, try to see past their behavior. Maybe it's self-absorption. Maybe it's toxic behavior on social media. And can you see what they're needing? Can you see that, can we change the way you look at someone else, the people you look at? And I want to show you one more thing, which I'm going to show you. I learned how to do this, which is so cool, because I learned how to use all these things, and it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the fact that my kids are whizzes at Zoom. And as you saw Menucha fixing my IT earlier, which is wonderful. So here's my whiteboard, and I can draw. And I want to show you a word in Hebrew, which is fascinating. So the word for flaw, anyone know it in Hebrew? Anyone know the word in Hebrew for a flaw? Okay, it's a chisaron. Oops, that's not a resh. It's supposed to be, but I don't know how to do it. No, you'll show me next time. Musi says it's really easy. Like really easy, apparently. For next class, if I use a whiteboard, I'm gonna have Musia give me a tutorial. Musia Menucha helped me in Hebrew school because they're better with the technology than I am. They're making games, they're doing breakout rooms, thank God. Okay, so in Hebrew, this word is chisaron. So one of the silver linings of Corona, aside from a lot of time with our children, one of the silver linings were that, and actually it was funny because I was talking to Levi and he was saying that he thinks Laser needs to go back to school. And Laser, we're waiting on visas. Hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have them to Israel. And I said, well, he said, he's been home for 8 months. That's a long time for a yeshiva bacher to be out, a yeshiva student to be out of the environment of learning. So I said, yeah, I think you're right. But he said, I look at Corona, I got to spend a lot of time with my brothers. And that was good because they've been away from home for a long time. And I got to know them differently. I got to know them like as people, right? Like I'm an adult. I'm not an adult because he's 11, but he's not an adult. He said, but I'm older now. I'm not a little kid, and they're older. So I got to really know them, and I know I'm going to want to know them as people. When we're adults and we're in life. So that's the good part. The bad part is it's been a little hard sharing a room. It was cute, but it was sweet that he was able to see the good in something that's difficult. So let's look at this word chisaron. So chisaron means literally a flaw. You look at people, there's a lot of flaws. They're loud, they're toxic, they're closed-minded, they're selfish, narcissistic. Think of flaws that we would describe in someone. And I actually explained this to the students, and I said to them, along with my challenge of find someone who bothers you and try to see the beneath the purpose, the beneath the behavior, beneath the manifestation of how they're presenting themselves. This is an idea that just this summer I learned, which really was mind-blowing to me. So one of the perks of the silver linings of COVID, it was Rabbi and I in Shabbat mornings, we weren't running till Chabad. We learned together. Before the kids woke up, we'd have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and we'd sit and learn. And we learned a talk from the first founder of Chabad philosophy, the Alter Rebbe, about 300 years ago, a little more than 300 years. And in it, he's addressing this idea of a flaw. So you and I, we look at a character trait or we look at a flaw and we say, oh, the person has issues, right? They struggle. So the Alter Rebbe says, if you look at, and we said this before in other Sinai scholars classes, that whenever you want to understand the root of something in Hebrew or according to Torah, you get to the root of the word, right? In Hebrew, there's the root word, and then there's prefixes and suffixes. So what's the root word, the Alter Rebbe says, of the word chisaron? So it's this word. Anyone know what chaser means? Chaser means missing. Missing. Something is missing. And here the Alter Rebbe shifts our perspective. He says, when you look at someone's flaw, the reason the flaw exists is because they're missing something. Basically, there was a need that was not met. So when you look at the word chisaron, don't translate it as a flaw. Translate it as an unmet need. And when we look at someone else's flaws, and we can say to ourselves, I don't know how to stop sharing. Hold on. Close. Hold on. Give me a second. My daughter's probably, okay, here we go. I was blocking the stop share with my own mouse. I have my tech people amused at my skills. When we see a flaw in someone else, if we can see it differently, instead of seeing it as a flaw, that's a bad character trait. If we could see there's some need that was not met, we could look at it with compassion and care. We could look at it differently. So when I see someone who thinks differently, who acts differently, if I see my child behaving in a way that I know is not maximizing my potential, I could look at the external behavior, or I could say, what unmet need is there? Now that does not mean, and I want to make this disclaimer, we're going to be able to figure out how to meet everyone's needs. If anyone says they will, keep me posted. Keep me posted if you figure it out. But when we try to do so, we see life differently. We see people differently, and we strengthen and develop that positivity bias we're trying to get really good at doing. So today's lesson is an ayin tov, developing a good eye, seeing in someone the potential, and trying to look at someone who's annoying and try to say maybe why, instead of getting angry at them. Why do they feel that way? Why did their perspective that way? Why is it they acted this way? Try to go beneath the surface and try to look at it with a level of compassion and positivity. And bit by bit, if we do that in one area, and that's actually my challenge to the students, I told them, try to find one person that bothers you this week and not only see the good, but also see it. And here's where I'm going to pause. And I want to share with you at Chabad that students can feel a sense of responsibility towards fellow students and could take care of each other, that it shouldn't just be, Rabbi and Manya are great, Rabbi and Manya are loving and warm and therefore fine. We want this whole, any interaction in Chabad should be a loving, warm, positive experience for students. Student needs a matzo ball soup, let them drive it to each other. Let them be involved in creating a warm, loving, good community. I don't want it just to be us. So when I saw this going on, I was a little bothered. And I was bothered, I thought it was a little selfish, a little narcissistic, like why are they leaving people out? And then the class was percolating in my head. And I said, well, I'm not looking at them with an ayin tov, right? I'm not looking at the why they're acting this way. Doesn't mean I should be accepting of it, and doesn't mean I shouldn't do something about it. And actually, as a matter of fact, one girl reached out to a new student and said, hey, do you want to sit with us? Hey, do you have a chair? And she went and brought the person over a chair, and another student went and talked to that new person. And I actually, when I spoke about Avram Avinu and Avram and Sarah and the home they built, and that was this week's Torah portion, I actually threw that in to kind of an educational way, say, all of us are building a home, right? All of us are responsible. These are character traits we want to develop. And so we're working on making that, helping students see that. But I realized that even those moments of thinking negatively, instead of thinking of how can I make this a teachable moment? How can I lift these students up? And really, if I realized what their chisaron was, what their flaw was, their flaw and their weakness was a need. They needed each other. They needed comfort. They needed people they knew. They needed to not work hard at making new friends when they're in such a stressful, it's been a really stressful semester for a lot of students. Stressful week for a lot of people in Texas, very stressful. So I have to also work on creating that ayin tov and seeing the students differently. And so instead of getting frustrated and aggravated, when I spoke about this idea. It wasn't like I didn't do it in a negative way, like, ooh, I said, I noticed, I noticed a student do this. I didn't say the rest, as you didn't. I said, I noticed when a student did this, and I tied it into Avram Avinu and Sarah's life. And it was just kind of a takeaway that we should always be looking out for those in need. But I think this is work. I don't know about you. Shelly, you nodded, so it seems like you agree that this may take work.
Yes.
Any thoughts? Any thoughts? Because this is not easy. Hard work. But we want to live that way, right? We want a world that's that way. So we got to do it. One step at a time, and actually that's what I told the students at the end. I told the students this. I said, we often look at the world and we don't like the direction things are going, or we do like the direction things are going. Maybe we're frustrated. I said, we can get angry. And I told them you could sit on Instagram and post a bunch of memes, or you can sit on Instagram and link a bunch of things, or go on Facebook and comment, or you could be the change you want to see. And this is what I told the students. I said, look what Abraham and Sarah did. The entire world was polytheistic. The entire world was struggling with morality. And Abraham and Sarah physically set up a tent in a location in Ashel, a place where people could come and eat and sleep and be taken care of. They were the change they wanted to see, and therefore they had influence. And you kids here, I said, all of you here, you are descendants of Abraham and Sarah. You inherited this role model. These are your role models of how to live. So don't get frustrated and sit behind the keyboard on Facebook. What can you do? And I quoted, there's a little known interview, or not interview, there are many people who passed by the Rebbe for dollars. And one was a New York Times editor, not a Jewish man, New York Times editor. And he actually, he asked the Rebbe, how do we get this world to a good place? Like, how do we gonna bring Messiah? You talk about this, like, how do we do this? How do we get the world better? And this is what I challenged the students with on Shabbat. I said, and this is the Rebbe's answer to the New York Times editor, random acts of goodness and kindness. Just random acts of goodness and kindness. And you know what? Today when I met with the student whose sibling passed away, she was on the way back from Colorado, where she basically said goodbye to her sister. And she was she gets to the flight and she's all nervous and she's stressed about COVID and she's, mask and shields and whatever. And no, she asks this person, can I sit near you? The person says, sure. The person picked her suitcase up, put it up, then took it down, then waited for her to go first. And she said she was in such a tumultuous emotional state. And she said, I looked at him and I said, you don't even know how much I needed your kindness today. She said, that guy has no clue what I went through today, the past 24 hours. But that random act of kindness, we never know when we could be that person for someone else. So that's what we need to do. We need to bring more light into the world. We've said this before, darkness is only the absence of light. When you bring light into a room, darkness disappears. So we need to bring light. We need to be light. We need to raise children that are light. I know many of your children, and your children bring a lot of light into the world. So L'chaim, if anyone has any thoughts of how we can actually practically do this, these are great in theory, but if anyone wants to mention, how do we do this? How do we do this when someone annoys us? Practically, any thoughts?
I could say there was someone that really annoyed you or someone that you didn't know or something like that. But if you treated everyone like they could be the Messiah, that it would make you treat people a little bit differently.
Yeah.
You never know. Yeah.
I think if you treat everyone, well, you know what we say every single morning before we start prayers to Hashem, where we're asking God for all the things that we need. We say, I take it upon myself, love my fellow like I love myself. It was specifically say like I love myself, because ourself, you and I, we have a bad day. I'm not saying you do. Okay, once in a while I have a bad day. I can say, listen, I was overtired. Oh, I had a headache. Oh, I was stressed. I snapped at you, but I was stressed out. We're very forgiving. We understand ourselves. We have to love our fellow like we love ourselves. We have to be as forgiving. I love that idea, Shelley. Anyone else have practical ways? Leora, Allison, Naomi, Allison, feel free to share any practical ways that we can do this. Make this into an action plan.
Well, I'm always reminded of it's related, not exactly the answer to what you're asking, but a very good friend of mine. We weren't always good friends. We weren't bad friends. We just weren't much of anything. And I was newer to the synagogue, and I didn't even realize that she didn't like me. I just thought that we were just kind of nothing. But her father, who came from Russia, he made a habit during the high holidays of doing teshuvah. Like really, he went to every single neighbor and he wanted to make amends for something that he did and make it right. And she came over to me. She said, can I have a moment? And I, of course. And she said, I just want to tell you that I had the wrong impression of you. And, you proved me wrong. And I don't know why I thought what I did, but so she really made amends, and she looked for a reason to see something that she hadn't seen before. So now we're actually wonderful friends.
Well, first of all, someone who has that strength of character is for sure a good friend for you, right? Someone who has the ability to have some humility. That's what it takes, by the way. It takes humility. It's hard.
And actually, we just happen to be, it just so happens, she's 15 years older than me, but we share the exact same birthday. And we are completely opposite politically, but our core values are the same. And so we just kind of look past those political things.
I think the world would be better if we all could do that. It's hard. It's really hard. Anyone else? Leora, do you want to share something? You're just listening? We can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
I know, I'm getting there. Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. Well, L'chaim, maybe by next week we'll all be able to jump back on here. We'll continue. We'll be able to report.
Say hi, Joey.
Hi. Hey, Joey. You get to join class. You could also say hi to Lazarus kids. I have some of my assistants right here. I will say that let's challenge ourselves once this week to see something that's bothering us and go beyond it, see the chisaron differently. And we'll continue learning next week together. I love learning with you ladies. Feel free to invite other Jewish Aggie moms. They're all welcome. This is not limited. We always love to learn together. And may we be able to really take these lessons into a real practical place.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time to do it. It's really nice of you.
Shelley, you should know that for me, it's a pleasure. It really, really is. I really love to learn together. I love to, first of all, it's really a treat to learn with you lovely ladies, right? And many of we know each other pretty well, and some of us don't know each other so well, but we'll get to know each other further. There's nothing like learning together, because we do all have so much to share and so much life experience, and the world can feel pretty crazy right now, but we have to recenter ourselves. We have to remember ourselves as Jews. This is not the first or last time we've been in a world that's chaotic or tumultuous. And as I told Levi, but Am Yisrael Chai, we're still here.
Right. And I love what you posted. I love what you posted on, I think it was, I don't know if it was Facebook or Instagram, I'm not sure, but about like, I'm still a mother, I'm still, I love that. That really, because I had been trying to like, tell my kids, and because everyone was just kind of also just like feeling anxious about things, and it said exactly what I wanted to say.
I want to tell you something, Shelley. It's so interesting you said that, because we went to bed, really late that night. And then at a certain point, I was like, okay, guys, everyone go to bed. This is not being decided tonight. Let's just go to sleep. And the next morning I woke up early, and I was still in I usually make Yassi breakfast at home. He likes eggs for breakfast, and I open the fridge, there was no eggs. And I'm literally in my pajamas. I mean, I never go to Chabad. I'm in pajamas. I throw a big sweater, chunky sweater over. I didn't even bother putting on shoes. I had these yummy, cozy slipper socks that I went to Chabad in. And I was like, just praying I didn't meet anyone. Like, could you imagine some mom rolls in and I roll? Like, it was not a sight to be seen. To be seen pajamas and cozy at the fireplace, but not to meet someone for the first time. So but as I was driving, it was pretty early morning, and the streets were quiet, and the birds were chirping, and the sun was streaming down. And I just thought, we just have to remember, like, we are still who we are, and the world is still here, and God is still involved, and we just need to like recenter ourselves and refocus on if we're anxious about what's going on, then there's something positive we could do. And I think that a lot of anxiety or overwhelmness comes from feeling out of control. And you know what? If there's one thing we've learned over the past 9 months, we're not in control, right? If anything, Corona has taught us and the entire world is none of us are in control. What's been controlling the entire world is this tiny, virus. And I think there's an art to learning to let go. I'm not saying it's easy. I promise this is, I always joke, because I know we're running late, but I always say that when I always, love to be in control and like things a certain way. And then I married someone who totally operates differently, which many of you may have married someone who's very different, right? Totally operates differently. And I was like, okay, I'm going to learn how to let go, make space for someone else and learn how to let go. Then I had 3 kids, and that was pretty under control. And then we moved to College Station, and campus being, when I taught preschool and Hebrew school in New Jersey, it was like pretty clear cut, the job description. You come to campus, you don't know if you're getting a phone call from a jail, from a hospital, from, okay, the calls that we get, it's quite diverse, and you never know. So I had to learn how to let go. And clearly I didn't learn that lesson well enough, because then Hashem's like, guess what? You're not having baby 4, you're having 4, 5, and 6. And if you don't know how to let go, how about try triplets? That's when you really learn how to let go. I said, okay, God, I got it. I just need to let go. And I think there's an art, and I think clearly we're still perfecting it. So let's see how we can use some of the tools we've learned so far, and how we can use this ayin tov, this good eye, to see beyond and bring light into the world. That's what we're charged with. That's where Tikkun Olam begins, when we can repair the world in a real way. Repair the world is not just donating to a homeless shelter. Tikkun Olam is, how do I look at my neighbor with a political sign that I don't agree with? Can I still wave at them and say hi? Have a great day. Love you, ladies. To be continued.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Good night. Thank you.